Well, colleagues, are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. I'll begin with a small segue, which is you just passed through the Heathcote tunnels. You hear that? Tunnels, the Nora and the Hands. But they couldn't afford the extra letters, so there's just the Heathcote tunnels. But the real segue is this, that when Sir Hans died, he, a lot of his own personal art collection had to be sold to pay death duties. I'm not sure that any of us here remember death duties. Anybody who's worked in English houses would. It's why James Lees Milne and the National Trust built such a wonderful portfolio. But it didn't work that way here. We never persuaded Treasury to go that far. In the collection that was sold, and incidentally the executor of Sir Hans's will was Sir Edward Hayward. The two families were quite closely linked socially, and Sir Edward bought several things from that sale, and one of them was the most wonderful floral still life called Summer Bunch, which is in the morning room, which he probably bought for his wife, Ursula, who was a great friend of Nora's. So nice little segue from the Cedars to Carrick Hill. But that's enough from me. I'm going to introduce you to a project that's been funded by the Copland Foundation. I'd just like you all to know the true ethical standards of making such decisions. I left the room, and my fellow trustees, who you've met, except for the Treasurer, who you'll meet tomorrow, decided whether it was a worthy enough project to run. They gave us $48,000, and that enabled us to contract two specialists. Carrick Hill doesn't have a curator on staff. As director, I have the fiduciary responsibility for the collection, and you could regard me as the keeper of the collection, but it's not in my job description or title. I'm responsible for the collection. I therefore hire, when funds are available, a collection advisor, Jane Hilton, who is a formidable person, and a registrar, Carolyn Berlyn, and they're going to take you through what has been achieved in 11 months with this project money. Jane, Caroline.
Now I'm going to use this because I don't have a very loud voice, so hopefully you can all hear me. First of all, welcome to Carrick Hill. Those who haven't been here before, I gather your bus trip has been eventful and you're not sunstruck, but recovered enough to enjoy the house. As Richard said, I've got a background in museums and galleries as a collections manager and registrar, and I've been really privileged to have the opportunity to work at Carrick Hill with the collection. We've left on everyone's chair just a simple one-page sheet of what we've achieved since the beginning of the year with the implementation of the Mosaic Collection Management System, which we have funded, as Richard said, from the Copland project. So I grew up here in Adelaide and have had a museum career both here and in Sydney, but I was still largely unaware of the scope and depth of this collection, and many Adelaideans still know very little about this house or its collection, and I'm constantly surprised, as other people have made comments this morning, at the number of people in Adelaide who will say, "Oh, I've never been there." Same old story. So many people in Adelaide will know about the house as a lovely wedding venue, but they've never been inside. And many will just have the notion that this was a house built by rich people that lived in Springfield, which was once one of Adelaide's premier residential suburbs. So for the first-time visitor who walks into what looks externally like quite a modestly proportioned house to come through the door into this main hall and be confronted by this imposing oak staircase, original oak panelling and architectural fixtures, and to find a house that's filled with fine 17th, 18th century furnishings, quality 19th century silver, ceramics, glass, and a paintings and sculpture collection that is of national and international standing. It's just not what people expect to find in suburban Adelaide. Richard's already told you something about the Haywards who owned the house. something about Beaudesert, where this panelling came from. So I'm not going to repeat that, but if you're interested, just along the hallway to my right, there are works hanging which tell you about the Paget family and Beaudesert. And this house was built from salvaged material in a way that many of us still do renovations, and is one of the best examples in Australia of that sort of genre of building. So when the Haywoods returned to Adelaide after their honeymoon, they set about conceiving this building where they could retrofit all the ancient handcrafted oak into a new but traditionally styled house. Some of the architectural perspective drawings for the house also are in the hall gallery along the way, but the original architectural drawings have been sent on long-term loan to the Architecture Museum that some of us went and saw yesterday afternoon at UniSA. But we've also got the house specifications, and the site reports are here in the archives as well. And it makes fascinating reading to listen. You know, you can hear the voices of the builders as they struggle to fit 17th century oak into a modern house, and a staircase that won't stay straight and creaks and does all sorts of odd things. So one of the things that the Mosaic database is allowing us to do is to make new links between the collection objects, the house and the Haywoods. And in entering the data about the pictures collection, we're uncovering some really interesting provenance and exhibition histories. We can cross-link works from some important exhibitions that were at the then National Gallery of South Australia, which is now the Art Gallery of South Australia, and also specific exhibitions that were mounted here in Adelaide in the early years of the Adelaide Festival, because the Haywoods were great patrons of the arts. For the first time, the Haywoods' personal library is included in the centralised database. It was included in the most recent valuation of the collection, and that was the information we used to upload into the database. And just last week I was entering some publication references about a particular artwork, which was Russell Drysdale's The Chinaman's Store, and there was a reference on it to an article. So I then went and found the actual Art in Australia reference that it came from, because there's an almost complete set here that runs right from the very early years of the 20th century through to the 1970s. So that sort of resource is actually here just in a cupboard, virtually. Upstairs in the Geoffrey Smart exhibition, in the smaller gallery that's about Smart's Adelaide, you'll see a small display developed by one of our interns, Greta Londi, and she's been able to source books, brochures and other objects to complement the works of art in the exhibition, and that's allowed us to tell a bigger narrative on Smart's relationship with Ursula Hayward, and it expands the story of the cultural life that they lived here in Adelaide. So that was an add-on that we were able to do to the Smart exhibition. Similarly, our other student intern, Anna Jug, who many of you have seen the last couple of days helping me with the technical equipment in the lecture theatres, she's been undertaking research on Bill Hayward's other life as a breeder of sheep, prize-winning Hereford bulls and racing horses, and objects from the collection, again readily available through a quick look up on the database, have been used to mount the small display which is in this the two cases in the corner behind it. And if we'd had the space, we probably could have put out twice as many objects. So we've never really been able to tell a lot about the personal stories of Bill and Ursula. We're starting to be able to do that. There's an archive, there's their library, there's the objects. I've put some books out as examples of the sorts of things that we find in their books, because Ursula put her notes and her Christmas cards and her jottings, there are receipts, there are doctor's bills, all sorts of things which are just in the books, and they're a wonderful resource. So the library is a fascinating window into the personal reading habits and interests of the Haywoods, and there's even a copy of Debrett's Peerage, which I've been using to help me attempt to identify some engraved coats of arms that feature on the silverware and the book plates. It's a very special collection, and Jane and I have put out a couple of tables that we can talk to anyone who's interested about what we've discovered. And I guess the thing about the database is it expands the way we can interpret, display and use the collection. We want to take it further. I don't know if Richard's talked about our Ton of Stuff blog that we started at the beginning of the year. We started it, we've had a couple of hiccups and it's stopped at the moment, but that's our first sort of little foray out into the web, if you like, and it's looking at some of the most important objects in the collection, or quirky objects that we will use next year for stage 2 of the collection, the year of the collection. So if anyone's interested in mosaic, they've given me some information brochures which are on the little table next to the carved figure of St Ursula, just over there by Anna. And if anyone wants more information on mosaic, I'm happy to give them that. So I guess the only other thing I want to say in light of some of the remarks that we've had over the last couple of days about volunteers and guides, there's an amazing team of volunteers and guides here who do wonderful research. People can come on a self-guided tour of the house, wander in that contemplative way, or there are 2 booked guide sessions every day that the house is open. So you might come as a couple and there will just be 2 who have a personal tour of the house, or you can book a group. So there's several different ways of coming through the house and interpreting it, and their research is amazing. So that's it for me. Jane's going to take over and talk more about the actual collection. Thank you.